And welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by CrowCast. Of course, no match this week, but Macca and I are just going to smash through the squad and have a chat about the team and how we're tracking, and talk about all things Adelaide Crows and see how we're looking for the rest of 2021. So without any further ado, let's crack straight in. Good evening everyone, and welcome to the Weekend Wrap, the bye week of the Weekend Wrap. So no Crows game to talk about this week, of course, but still plenty to talk about. And joining me to talk all about it, as usual, is Macca. How you go, Mac?
Yeah, no, travelling pretty well. Did miss the fact that we didn't have a game, but you know, the boys are probably very glad that they had a week's rest anyhow.
That's right. Look, it's always nice to have a bit of a rest. But no rest for the wicked here on the CrowCast, of course. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on this bye week in the Discord channel. Don't forget, for those that are in the Discord channel, if you want to get around and have something to say, get in the live studio audience and put your hand up, and we'll certainly be glad to have you on. Tonight's probably a very good night to have a chat, as we'll be talking obviously about how we've gone so far this year and how we might fare for the remainder of the year and going forward. So I'm sure there are plenty of opinions and plenty of people that have got something that they'd like to share with us. Also, welcome and thanks for everyone who's joined us on YouTube and also on Twitch. You get around us on all those platforms. And of course, just a reminder, if you want to support the CrowCast, get around patreon.com/AFL CrowCast and hit us up there if you like. Every piece of support is greatly appreciated. Macca, given that there wasn't any footy on this week, did you have a look at all the others?
I did, as usual. Yeah, that's when you get to my age, mate. You don't go out boozing every day and every night. Oh, they did go out last night. I love watching my footy. I love watching all the games.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get straight into the weekend's results, shall we? And on Friday night, we saw a very close game. Western Bulldogs probably feel as if they threw one away there, I reckon. Geelong 12-11-83, getting up after the siren with Gary Rowe kicking that goal. Western Bulldogs 11-12-78.
Yeah, look, I think you're quite right in your summation of that. I thought the Bulldogs were slightly better on the night, not by a lot, obviously, but just by a whisker, perhaps. But that isn't how it eventuated. It was sort of like a bit of a finals preview. We had two very good sides, but with totally different methods. Geelong have got theirs, which they like to keep possession of the ball, and we've often said, well, they can't win a flag with that, and their coach must have listened to us that they have to speed it up a bit, because they have definitely, while they like to keep possession, they are moving the ball forward a lot quicker than they were previously at the start of the season. Yeah. The Bulldogs, they've got their own method, which is to keep these lightning handballs, which they must practice non-stop at training until they can get somebody clear. And both methods worked at times, and of course, playing against each of them playing against a good team, and then there were times when it failed. But as you said, probably Bulldogs slightly maybe should have won it, but the Geelong, they happened to do the right thing at the right time, and that a very good kick by Gary Rowe, who is a good shot for goal, was in the right hands.
Yeah.
Geelong were a bit unlucky. Duncan, he's done his knee, and he's not having a very good run at all. Norton got bruised ribs out of it, but I think probably the guy that really won it for Geelong, and you don't normally say it about a person in this position, was Stewart down at fullback.
No, very good across halfback. Halfback.
Yeah, I thought he was the one that actually was the difference between the two sides. So
yep,
that's my summation of that one. Yep.
I'd agree with that. He was very good. Look, I think the Bulldogs did play into his hands a bit. I didn't think their forward 50 entries were terribly effective, especially when Geelong started to put the pressure on. My impression overall, Mac, was that Western Bulldogs didn't have a lot of room to improve, whereas Geelong do. So, based on that game, and I know it was down at Alphabet Stadium down there, but based on that game, I would imagine that Geelong would feel better about that game, despite the actual result. I feel like they've got more to give. I don't know whether Western Bulldogs could play much better.
Their coach would probably disagree because he thought after the game that his team had played very well, and he thought his team has got a bit more improvement in it. So,
I don't know about that.
Look, I think both sides probably got a little bit more, and certainly from what I saw of both these two teams, they should be up in the top four and participating.
No doubt.
Certainly, around about preliminary final level at least.
Oh, no doubt. And a lot can happen between now and then. Look, on Saturday we had a few games. We had Port 12-9-81 over a very, very disappointing Gold Coast Suns. 4 goals, 7-31. Oh, yeah. What a horrible game that was.
Yeah. Well, it was. It was a really horrible game. Actually, I made a couple of phone calls while I was watching it. That's how good I thought it was. But the Gold Coast had the home advantage, and that's about the only advantage they had all day. Probably the biggest thing to come out of that game was Robbie Gray doing his knee. It was a medial strain, and he might get back for finals. He might not. And he's a good player. You can't afford to lose players like him. And another one that got an injury was the self-termed cult figure, Lockie Jones. I heard him say on radio, when you're a cult figure, like that is actually true.
Oh,
and
that's drinking your own bathwater, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
But talking about players who can really play, Ollie Wines, I thought was outstanding. He was with 43 possession. That was absolutely
best game
outstanding.
For the season for Ollie.
Yeah, and Motlop, who loves an easy kill but not a hard one, he was running around the place like an unregistered dog.
Yeah.
But when you switch to the Gold Coast, you have to say they are so poor in their, or personally getting the ball, but they're so poor in their usage of the ball. They'll be lucky to beat North Melbourne next week. And, guys like Toot Miller, who busts his gut, and he played another very good game.
Yeah.
And Anderson actually played a good game for the day. They must look at the other guys and think, can't you guys do better? Can't you try better? Sure. Are they that bad, or is it Stuart Jew's no good? I mean...
No, it can't. It's not the coach, because they keep playing the same way over and over. I don't think that team has got any confidence in each other. They don't use each other. They don't try to bring each other into the game. Their transition from halfback is woeful. They need a bit more of a focal point, I believe. Someone that can just hit the ball up a bit more. But they don't use each other well enough, in my opinion, and that comes down to, I think, trust and confidence in each other. And I don't know what the answer is, Macca. But anyway, we talk about the Suns in this way every week, so let's move on. We also had the Lions getting up by 23 points in the end, 9-14-68 to North Melbourne 6-9-45.
Yeah, best way to describe this game, I would have thought, would be to say it was a dour struggle. That North Melbourne actually even led at half time because they're not that good, North Melbourne, but they have 100% crack at it, and so they led by 2 points at half time, and it was an arm wrestle between a team that hasn't got a lot of class and a team that's got a bit of class but wasn't perhaps using it. Yep. In the second half, Brisbane got their game going a bit, and led by Lions, an ex-Crows player, 36 disposals, who was outstanding.
Yep.
And Newell's starting to find a little bit of form. Not much else to say about it than that, other than the fact that while North Melbourne are bottom, they don't deserve getting a priority pick thing because they are quite a competitive team.
No, and credit to David Noble. They've had a couple of shocking losses, but he's managed to regather the troops, and they are playing with spirit, and they're certainly down on personnel, talent-wise. So, good on him for at least getting to play for the Guernsey and play for each other, and they certainly weren't disgraced. A team that continue. I mean, we talk about the Gold Coast Suns a lot, Macca, but compared to the Suns would be laughing compared to Carlton. Another loss, 16-6, 102 to 9-12, 66. And the thing of it was that for a good portion of the game, Carlton were up to their necks in it. But when it came time to win the game, when it came time to put in and give an extra 10%, they just didn't have it. They didn't have it.
No, that's when they get really found out, isn't it? When it comes to really crunch time, they get their asses kicked, and they really did get their ass kicked at the end. I don't know what their future is either, because they've had so many rebuilds and they're still in this position, and we say this every week. And I'll ask you a question: do you think that Teague, and there's going to be a review, do you think Teague will hold his job?
I think he will. I think it's a personnel issue. I see they put the hard word on Mark Murphy during the week and dropped him back, and good on him. It'll be interesting to see how he reacts at the tail end of his career, whether he's got enough left in the tank to push back into the first team. I think their problem is all about squad profile. They've got some very good players, Macca. They've got a great focal point up forward. But I think they made a mistake getting Eddie Betts back, even though he's provided them with some good games and some good highlights.
Exactly that to Mrs. Macca during the game.
Yep. I think the lad they brought over from GWS, it was, I think, or was it Gold Coast?
Williams.
That was a mistake. They targeted the wrong kind of players. They don't have enough midfield grunt, in my opinion, and they don't have enough run off half back, in my opinion. I think Teague is a good player manager. Whether he's a good tactical coach is yet to be seen. But there are other coaches in the league who are not expert tacticians, but have a good group of coaches around them. I think Teague can get the players to play for him. I just don't think he's got the right squad right now.
He certainly has, and I asked you that because I think he's actually the victim of Silvani being the list manager for all those years.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I think Silvani wrecked that list, and we've spoken about that before. Of course, just the one game today, and we had Essendon getting up over the Hawks by 13 points, 13-8-86 to 10-13-73. I must admit, I didn't watch the game today, but Essendon just ticking along, Macca.
Yeah, look, they've always got that little bit about them, Essendon. I like watching them as a footy team. They even when they lose, they always have a crack, and they do always have some nice little passages in their game. It was a very, very, very watchable game, actually. Hawthorn are playing slightly better than they were early in the year. And Essendon definitely playing reasonably good football at the moment. They, at stages it looked like Hawthorn might win, but then they might get a goal up, and then Essendon would get 2 goals, and then so on. It just kept swinging back and forth. Look, we're not talking about giant sides here, but I think Essendon is one that's got a future. They've got some really good players in their side, and they don't need to add that much to it to make it into a good side, because they chose very well at the draft. And you must mention the bloody stringer. Now, Brian Taylor, he turned him the package, and then over recent years he's become the parcel, and then perhaps put the paper bag. But today he was the package, mate. He really was. He played the best game he's ever played. Played 29 disposals. He's playing in the centre as well. He kicked 4 goals, 7 tackles. He was outstanding. Outstanding. And he was a package today.
Yeah. Look, good on. Hang on, I'm just trying to work something out here. There we go. I think PJ Crow's in the chat talks about the Bombers kids being good. I agree. They just re-signed Merritt during the week as well, who'd been thinking about moving on. So he obviously has some faith in the system and what they're building there. So, the Bombers might be one of our rivals over the next 5 years as both teams sort of build back up to premiership contention, Mac.
They will be. They will be.
All right, let's just have a quick look at the ladder there, and we've what have I done here? Here we go. Now that everyone's played 13, it's a bit more meaningful. We've got Melbourne on top on 44 points, the Bulldogs and the Cats even in second and third on 40 points. Brisbane in the 4 on 36 points. Port Adelaide just outside the 4 on 36 points as well. Sydney starting to tail off, Mac, on 32 points along with West Coast, and Richmond still sitting in the 8 there on 28 points, half a game clear. Sydney still look the vulnerable one, don't they? As we look at the second half of the table there, and we've got who we got? We got the Giants on 26 points, half a game out, look the likely contenders to take Sydney's spot, but don't rule out Essendon to sneak in. Essendon on 24 points along with Fremantle, Adelaide and St Kilda on 20 points, Carlton, Collingwood and Gold Coast on 16 points, Hawthorn on 12, probably a little bit lower than their form suggests they should be, and North Melbourne on 6 points.
Well, when we talk about Sydney, they were playing pretty good footy up until about a couple of weeks ago. But their last game, they were terrible. They just did not turn up for the match at all mentally. And they are if there's going to be a change in the 8, they are the one. And the two sides that you mentioned are the two that could possibly be the ones to take their place. GWS are starting to get their good players back, and they're starting to play some very good football too.
Yeah.
And as I say about Essendon, they will have a crack, and when they're on, they can do some marvellous things. So both those teams, it wouldn't surprise me if they did take Sydney's place. But, it's up to Sydney. But I think PJ's put it up. Before I was just about to say it, I reckon that GWS will probably be the team to knock Sydney out, I reckon. And I think they probably will.
Yeah, well, we've said that all along, haven't we, that GWS are probably the ones to watch. And I think that's probably still the case. Sydney look a little bit worn out, actually, which is a bit unusual. But they might have been just looking for the bye to rejuvenate themselves a little bit. But they certainly look the most vulnerable, don't they?
They were very flat last game, very flat. There was just no oomph in them at all. So, maybe the bye will do them good, but... we can only go by what we saw last time, and going by what we last saw, and also GWS starting to strike form. So, I think GWS will get them.
Yep. No one else really looks vulnerable there, I don't think. I mean, Richmond, even though they're only half a game clear in 8th, we all know what they're capable of, and assuming that they fire off in the second half of the season as they tend to do. They're pretty safe. I don't think there's anyone else there that really looks vulnerable. So almost set the 8. Just probably 8th spot is going to be the query.
That's all.
All right, Macca. Well, I thought we might have a bit of a chat about the Crows halfway through the season. Of course, anyone on Discord who'd like to share their opinions with us, please get in the live studio audience. We've got 9 people in there at the moment. Plenty more chatting on the live show chat and also on YouTube. Thanks everyone for joining us there. But if you do want to have something to say, share your opinions with us. A great show to be doing that this week, as we've got a bit less to talk about. But in the meantime, Mac, if you were to give your overview of the first half of the season, how would you put us?
Probably about where we expected us to be. All things going well. We don't have the greatest squad of personnel. We'd be kidding ourselves to say that. When you do a rebuild, you're starting at the bottom, and you bring in youngsters, and you hope they'll go well, and we've done that, and a couple of them have done quite well.
Yep.
And yeah, in the chat they say better than expected, but we are probably about one win better than expected, but maybe even two really because of who we beat. But I did have the faith in the coach. I had the faith in the coach, and we got very good assistants to help him. And I did like the game plan they're getting us to play. Whereas last year we had no faith in our assistants. We had no faith in our game plan. Or put it this way, it only started to work in the last tail end of the year when we got those 3 wins. So I think we've got, is it 5 wins? We've got a 4.
Five.
5.
Oh, no, sorry,
yeah,
4, 16 points. No, 5, 20 points.
Yeah, I thought it was 5, and I think there's probably about another 3, at least 3 winnable games ahead of us. There's Carlton, Hawthorn, North Melbourne, and Essendon. Now we could easily pick up 3 of those and end up with 8 wins. Now, this is where you get your divided loyalty, whether you want to win that many and be that far up, or whether you want to be closer down to the picking end when it comes to the draft time. But I think that we've probably slightly exceeded what we anticipated, and I do think we have the right coach, and I do think we have the right assistants, and we are working out who are the right players. Most of them, and the one thing that we have to say is, prior to the draft, you and I, we were very, very much in McDonald people. And thank God they picked the players in the draft and not us, because Thorpe is going to be the next Adelaide champion. And I'll say that without any hesitation. He is going to be a legendary player.
Well, I think you and I and many others sort of pigeonholed Riley in terms of the strings to his bow. And, you could argue on that basis, who was better out of him and Logan. But when you actually see Riley play and understand that he's just so much more than a big forward, so many more strings to his bow, so many more elements to his game, and so much more difficult to control, you just realise what we've got in our hands there. Look, PJ is exactly the same as me. I wanted McDonald and O'Driscoll. Well, McDonald has not started too badly. O'Driscoll's been a bit average, so shows you what we know. Look, I'm pretty much with you. Now I have to give a little flex here, Macca, because I was down at Harbour Town on Friday after work, and I got pulled up by someone who said, "Oh, Phoenix from CrowCast." So that's the first time I've ever been recognised in public. Obviously, now I've had to hire security, and I'm dealing with paparazzi and all that sort of crap. But the reason I bring that up is because what he and I was talking about was very much the fact that even though we're in a situation where sorry, just bear with me a moment. Even though we're in a situation where but anyway, even though we're in a situation where we want high draft picks and all the rest of it, I think it's better that that we're actually playing a brand of football that is engaging, it's obviously engaged the players, and I would much rather us finish sort of 8 to 12 or 10 to 12 with some momentum, with some belief, and sort of up and about, and get a lower first round draft pick than sort of drag ourselves to the line in 2021 with 20 average games into those young kids. Do you know what I mean? Like those kids that have played this year, they're going to end up with 20 good, competitive, positive games into their career rather than 20 average, getting belted, down in the dump sort of games. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, actually. When we look at the really good players in the draft, you draw and you think, yeah, I want them. But you're quite right. It's all about your team belief and team culture, and you're quite right. The best thing is for us to win as many games as we can, and when we lose, to only just lose because we've had a real crack at it. And because this is really building a basis for our long-term future.
Yep.
North Melbourne are in the process of doing exactly the same thing. They're starting a little bit behind us. Carlton has started 10 years ahead of us, and they're still there.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing.
And
you look at a club like Carlton, and would you really want to be in that position after all this time? Terrible. So I think winning culture is actually quite important in my belief.
I think you're quite right, and I the one thing that I do take pride in Adelaide Football Club at the moment is when they go out on the ground, you can be pretty confident they're going to have a red hot crack.
Yep.
Occasionally they might have a slow start, but during the game they're going to have a red hot crack, and that's one thing. When we started last year, it took probably until about the last half a dozen games before we got anywhere near that. But this year it's been virtually every game.
Yeah. 1990 Crow says in the chat, Melbourne is the counter argument. Well, I'll put a counter argument to that. How long has it taken Melbourne? Melbourne might have Petrarca and Brayshaw now, but they've had midfield combinations in the past. Viney was supposed to be the saviour. They had the two young Jacks that were supposed to be the saviour. They've had some. It's a fair while since Dean Bailey had them, and they've been in the doldrums for all that time until this year. So I wouldn't be putting Melbourne up as a counter argument at all, because I think just the passage of time has served them well, and they've lucked out now. But I'd much rather our situation where we've got every pundit in the AFL media circles, and I'm sure the other teams as well, know that when you come up against the Adelaide Crows, they're going to have a crack. And Pete and I were only saying the other day that isn't it great to watch a team of Crows players that give a crack? Because for so long, Mac, we were talking about Crows teams that were flaky and untrustworthy, and that went missing in big moments. And you just don't get I don't get the same feel from this team, from this squad at the moment.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, and a question to you, and which is I'll also address to the guys in the chat because they're pretty bright. With the squad we've currently got at the moment, what are, and we won't get them all overnight, but what are the positions we really need to bolster to become, say, a top 8 side?
Yeah.
We're going to talk about flags yet. The top 8. Well,
we'll probably delve into that in a little bit more detail, Mac. What I will say at the moment is that I feel that the two areas that we're really... there's probably really only one, and that's outside running silk. I feel like I don't want to get into it too deep right now, because I'd like to go through the squad and maybe we can pinpoint a little bit more there. But at the moment, and you'll see, we might just segue into let's have a look here, into some of the team rankings, just to give you an idea of the style of football that we're playing at the moment, Macca. And I'll just run through some of the averages and where we sit in those averages. So at the moment, we rank 18th for disposals, which surprised me a little bit, because I've never seen a game where I've felt like there's a huge disparity in disposals. There's been a couple of times where there's been a bit of a disparity in uncontested possession. But I was surprised to see that our average disposals of 348 were 45 behind the top ranked team, which is Geelong, and even 10 or 15 above middle of the tier. So that surprised me a little bit. Then you go into let's have a look here. If you go into clearances, you can see that in terms of clearances, we're also ranked only 13th in clearances. So 34.6.
Yep.
It is a surprise. But the one that really, in my opinion, and I was looking at these before, so okay. That's the one that I was looking at before that really kind of illustrated to me the type of game style that Nix is trying to build here is contested possession. We're ranked 5th in contested possession. So, 141 contested possession. The lowest ranking is Kangaroos with 126. So we're quite a way ahead. Even though we're not ranking really highly in clearance work, contested possession, I think, is what Matthew Nix is actually trying to build his game around. Ground ball, winning the 50-50s, and actually trying to be quite efficient with ball movement. I think that's if you're going to if you're going to look at Nix's sort of strategic plan over the next 3 years, I would say that step one for him would have been win the ball, and I think that's what he's been focusing on. And I think those stats show that winning the ball is certainly something that the Crows have been doing well at.
Yeah, well, many a coach would agree about the ground balls. 'Cause that's where the ball is most of the time, on the ground. So, but yeah, I'd say that we're not too bad in that particular area. I'm not that surprised. I am surprised that we're 18th in disposals, but we do bird the ball quite a bit. But we are playing a fairly adventurous style as well, so that also will happen when you do that. I think that we've got in general terms. I just think we've got a good back line. We need quick mids, and I'd love to have a ruck that can really leap high.
Yeah. You mentioned about turnovers. We're ranked 4th in the competition with turnovers behind Port, surprisingly, who are top ranked in turnovers, Kangaroos and Magpies. I think when you have a look at our efficiency inside 50, and it's not on this graph, unfortunately, but I did have a look on Stats Pro earlier. Our efficiency inside 50 is quite high. Our inside 50s, which I think is here, let me just find it. Inside 50s. So inside 50s, we're ranked 10th. So we're certainly middle of the road in terms of getting the ball inside. And we are scoring okay. We're not lagging behind in terms of our scoring shots compared to the rest of the competition. So if you recall, Macca, during the season so far when we've been reviewing the games, a lot of our games are played between the 2 arcs. And it shows it shows that we're quite good defensively across half-back. Blokes like Geordie Butts has been going well. Tom Diday has improved as the season's progressed. Our small defenders haven't been going too bad. By and large, our defensive work has been pretty good. But we've struggled, and we highlighted this earlier in the season, we've struggled in terms of our method into the forward 50. Certainly improved over the last couple of weeks, I think, but certainly early on, that was a problem. So I think that's where the improvement has been, and I think if you're going to track our possession count, I reckon our possession count would have increased over the last 3 games or so, because our transition has changed and we're actually using the ball more.
Yep. I can't argue with anything you've said there, Fane. I've got really nothing to add to that.
Well, thanks for being on. No. I'm just having a bit of laugh. Look, it's true though. Remember we were bombing the ball from behind centre into the forward 50 up until probably 3 weeks ago, and then whenever we've played well, we've moved the ball, further towards our forward 50 before entering forward 50 with, extra disposals, and I think that's probably an area of polish that the team has been working on, rather than just those dump kicks to, leading to shallow entries into forward 50.
I was struggling to remember a point I was going to make there, and now it's just come back to me. No, the real thing, I reckon the real change in our forward line is not having Himmelberg or Frampton in there. And I I reckon it looked so much more dangerous up forward since we've had Thorpe in the side up forward, and Fogarty alongside him, and Tex running around in the centre half forward area, or Fogarty and Tex alternating in between. And in other words, instead of having the big lumbering guy just getting in the way, because when we used to have the extra tall down there, there'd be just too many tools, and they'd congregate, and we do that dump kick, as you know, which comes always flying back out over your heads. And I think since we've got that, we've got more little guys, that they spread a lot more, and that's one of the reasons why I think our forward line has improved out of sight. So I think it's really, and I don't know what we're going to do with Frampton and Himmelberg, because while these guys stay fit, there's no room for them.
Well, would you agree, Macca, that when you've got a couple of tall blokes up forward, and we were playing 3 genuine tall blokes up forward at various stages during the first half of the year, it actually leads to a tendency to kick it high? Because
yes, it does.
That's your game plan. You got 3 tools up forward. Why wouldn't you kick it in the air? But it's no good if those blokes aren't taking grabs. And at various stages, neither Frampton or Himmelberg have shown any propensity to take the game by the scruff of the neck up forward, aerially anyway. Whereas the configuration we've got now with Riley, who's tall but he's also mobile, and Tex and Fogarty, who are good on the lead up, I think it's actually promoted a better method into our forward 50, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it demands the player of the ball looking for someone, because there's smalls running around, and you've got and Fogarty and Thorpe and Tex are generally apart from each other. So instead of just bombing away, they really have to raise their eyes, as they should, and go for a target.
Yep.
It makes it so much more dangerous. And, the more we play with that structure, the better we're going to be too.
Yeah, I think so. That said, there's no harm in having another good marking forward, like overhead marking forward. We saw what value having McGovern in our team was when he was actually playing well. Having that bloke that can come in and take a grab is, and not be the focal point is a good thing. We've all been hoping that Shane McAdam will be that, and it's well documented over the last month that we've all, I think, been a little bit disappointed with Shane's output, not only offensively but also defensively as well. So I think the jury's out on whether Shane's going to be the long-term solution as that X factor tool, I guess you'd say. But we do have a couple in the wings. Lockie Gallant showed some good nick when he debuted in the SANFL last week. So, I guess what I'm saying is that it looks like right now what Matthew Nicks is building is a team that is primarily focused on winning the ball, which, I think is step one. The next step, I think, is to build some finesse and some composure under pressure to be able to retain possession. We saw how well a team like Geelong can retain possession under pressure, and how valuable that is to be able to retain possession under pressure. We've tended to turn it over in those situations, and that's probably the next step.
Yeah, I mean, Geelong are probably the best in the competition at doing that, and they'll do that in under 2 circumstances. One is where they're looking, rather than bombing the ball and losing the ball and turning it over, they'll wait and they'll keep passing and they'll keep waiting and just looking for that weakness. Or it can also be very handy when you're getting towards the end of a game and you're only a few points up. Then if you've been practicing possession like as they do all the time, well, it's not very likely they're going to turn it over. Yeah, you're quite right. That's something we have to become good at.
Yeah, and what backs me up on there is that we're ranked 18th for uncontested possession, and it's been a consistent. We're ranked 18 by a long way. We have 50 less uncontested possessions per game on average than Geelong, who are ranked number 1. Not every top team plays that style, But if you look at the rankings for uncontested possessions, it's in order: Cats, Bulldogs, Hawks, who have always played that way, Port, Essendon. So you've got some teams up there that are actually, and it's probably where the Tigers are falling down at the moment, because they're probably not getting enough of the ball to do enough damage. But that's the area. That's the statistic to me that really shows how we're playing at the ball. We're fierce at the contest. We're always going to give 100%. We lack finesse on the outside, and we lack the ability to maintain possession. Some of that is structural, and some of it is youth and inexperience. But I would say that on top of Nixie's list is to push that statistic up.
Oh, obviously so. And I thought PJ's comment there with that confidence brings uncontested ball use, and there's no doubt about that. And at this stage, our players are in the stage of where the coach is saying, see ball, get ball, and then try and do something with it. Yep. And once you become very good at that, then that's when you can afford to expand slightly into the other area. And also, the players will tend to gradually do that themselves as they have a lot more belief in themselves and also in their teammates. And I would say that, these players now have played quite well. It's still only about 10, 12 games, and some have played all those games together. And they would be starting to really believe in each other in terms of, and have a very good idea how the other players play as well.
Yep.
So I think we have got the nucleus of a good side there. It's just adding players around them now, and some of them will come from below, and some of them will come from outside.
Yeah, and at this stage, obviously, we've got a strategy, I would imagine, of going to the draft. But let's not rule out bringing players in. I think there'll be a couple of trades this year. I think the two tools that you mentioned, I think, might be on thin ice. At least one of them, I think, Himmelberg, will certainly be looked at to be moved on.
Yeah, so I think Frampton's got another year on his contract, hasn't he?
Yeah, and probably he's the backup ruck option along with Kieran Strawn, I think. The Crows have shown now that they're happy to have Riley come in and chop out Riley O'Brien in the ruck. So we've got the two Rileys there. Riley Thorpe has shown that he's more than a competent ruckman. He tends to break even when he chops out for O'Brien. So the Crows are happy with that, I'd imagine. And it takes Himmelberg and Frampton out of the frame, barring injury, of course. I think the Crows will decide to stick with one of them, and Frampton obviously is the one in contract. Himmelberg has been a major disappointment. Apart from a bright period of time in the second half of last year, he just hasn't shown the ability to match his potential, in my opinion. But there will be a team that wants him, I would imagine. Those sort of players don't grow on trees, and he might thrive in a different environment. But I think he's the one that might be number one on the trade table.
We wouldn't get much for him though, Fane. We'd have to be prepared to take whatever we get, sort of thing.
I think you get a third rounder for him, Mac.
Well, I think if you got a third rounder, you'd grab it because.
Well, he's still a big, tall player who can take a mark sometimes and ruck. And there'd be a team that would bank on being able to turn that around. So I reckon you'd get a late third rounder for him.
Well, as usual, the chat's right on it. Remember, Eddie Himmelberg did sign up for another couple of years, didn't he? Oh,
did he? Oh, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think we're stuck with him for both of them.
Well, we're almost, when you consider we've also got Fisher Mackesy as a tall player who, yes, we drafted him as a defender, but he can also play up forward. All of a sudden, we're where would you possibly fit either of Himmelberg and Frampton into our current forward setup? You just wouldn't. And even if Tex drops out, and there's been talk about the club offering Tex another year, even if Tex drops out, I wouldn't have either of Frampton or Himmelberg take Tex's spot.
No, I 100% agree with you there, Fiend. If we said to, say Chimmelberg, and we said to him, we've signed you up, but look, to be honest, you're not going to get many games. Well, would you like to be traded to a team that might want you? He may well be in that anyhow. I would, if I was at a footy club and I was told that, I'd be very happy to go to another club that wanted me and said they'll play me.
Oh, absolutely. And there's every chance that'll happen. Just the fact that he's contracted, it just makes it a little bit more difficult.
Well, and it also gives you the advantage that he can't walk for nothing.
Well, that's true, but I mean that's all well and good if he's actually a player in demand. I don't think he'll be terribly much in demand. There'll be probably a team that looks at him, but they won't be prepared to spend a hell of a lot of money because he's only played a handful of games in 5 years in the system.
Yeah, well, hopefully Gold Coast might, because at the moment the Gold Coast they're a bit lean in the ruck area at the moment.
Look, possibly. It's possible.
They do have Witt, but he's injured. He might be right next year. I don't know. I don't think we're going to get much for him if we do get rid of him anyhow.
No, I agree. Don't forget, those of you in the live audience, I should say, if you do want to have an opinion or share an opinion, I should say, on our current topic, please put your virtual hand up, and I'll be happy to have you on board for a chat. This week is certainly the week to do it. Macca, I thought we might just have a look at some individuals and just see how we're tracking from that perspective, and probably then segue into what you were referring to earlier with regards to where the gaps are in the squad, and just looking at, we'll just go top down, I think. I'll just line that up a little bit. Just bear with me a moment. I've got Rory Laird on the screen anyway, mate, and he's been a bit of a revelation, I must say, up forward. In the midfield.
He's been outstanding, actually. Rory Laird gets 100% every week, and he ends up with good numbers with the ball because he just keeps trying and running. He must have very good stamina as well. He's very brave. He goes when we're angels fear to tread. He's obviously he can get tackled and thrown to the ground and everybody on top of him, but he'll end up out in the open there and get a pass, and he can do it inside and outside. Now I love him as a player. He's good.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at some of his stats. He's averaged 31.3 disposals, including 14.1 kicks and 17.2 handballs. 5.8 tackles for the season. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some meaningful stats there. Inside 50s, averaging 4.2. His disposal efficiency is okay at 69. Rebound 50s, 1.8. Kicking efficiency is probably a bit low. Mac 51.9% kicking efficiency. Overall, his effective disposals are okay, 21.6 effective disposals a game. But it's his inside work where he shines. 15.2 contested possessions per game. Around stoppage, he's averaging 3 centre clearances and 3.9 stoppage clearances per game. So, and that's where he's been most valuable to us this year, in my opinion.
He's very durable because, he goes in with range of fear to tread, and he doesn't miss games either. He must take some quick old knocks during a game.
Yep. He was averaging 5.8 tackles a game, 20.8 pressure acts. Score involvements, which is a stat that I love, is 6.4, so he does get involved in score involvements. I'm trying to look at a time on ground average. Here we are, 78.1% time on ground. So he spends a lot of time on the park. As you can see from his possession heat map there, he's not shy to play behind the ball. He gets a lot of his ball in the back half, Macca, and it's been a great season for him so far.
Well, I did hear him on the radio, and he was talking about his transition from a halfback on the ball. and he said, that he really loves it on the ball. And he said, I wish I'd found this on the ball thing out a lot earlier.
Well, he used to play on the ball at Westies when my lad was there, and he did all right. So no surprise he's doing all right. It was always going to be his size that was the query, but that hasn't been a problem at all. So good on him for that. And it certainly assisted our transition, Macca, because without Matt Crouch, we really needed Rory Laird to step up, and he's certainly done so, hasn't he? So good on him.
True.
All right, let's just go and have a look at Benny Keys. Benny Keys has been a revelation. Continues to be a revelation. Macca, 28.6 disposals.
Absolutely the type of player you love to get for nothing.
Yep, 6.2 tackles, 3.8 marks. Just is a bit of a ball. And yes, he's got his limitations. Yes, at times his disposal isn't 100% right, and you'd like him to be able to be a little bit more polished. But if you want a bloke who shows 100% commitment every day of the week, then he's your man.
100% agree with you, because he and Lairdy, they're two of a kind. Laird probably, they play very similar types of game. They're both very brave. They work hard. They keep going. And Keys could do a little bit more polish on his kicking, but as you pointed out, Laird's wasn't that good either. So both those two boys, they are the two best players in the club at the moment.
Yeah, let's just run through some of the stats because it is quite impressive. Averaging 28.6 disposals, 5.7 inside 50s. His disposal, as we mentioned, down 64.5%. Rebound 50s, 1.6. His kicking efficiency, you'd love to see him get that up into the 60s at least, currently 49.3. Metres game, 437. Contested ball, though, that's 10.9. Uncontested, 15.8. Ground ball gets 7.9. That's where his value is. His stoppage work there. Centre clearances averaging 2.7. Stoppage 3. Where else am I looking here? Tackles, 6.2 tackles a game. 24.1 pressure acts per game. That's where his value is. And again, we're talking about Benny Keys. We've just talked about Rory Laird. Both have a high possession rate in the back half, and what's been one of our Achilles heels with our midfield over the past few years, Macca?
Exactly. They never went there.
They never went back, did they? Never went back.
What's that mob back down there called? We call that the back line.
Yeah. That's the bottom feeders. But no, so both Laird and Keys have only had one possession in the forward 50 for the entire season. How's that?
That is outstanding.
One possession each. So it's quite amazing. So that just shows a willingness to work, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. They're prepared to do all the hard things, and both are. That's what I say. They're built in the same mould.
Yep, agreed. Now, let's have a look at Seed. I've probably been a bit harsh on Seeds. Mate.
He's had a great year, Fane. He's had a great year.
I still think he's a bit of a good seed, bad seed, but let's have a look anyway. Averaging 26 disposals, 16 kicks, 10 handballs, as you'd expect. 5.5 marks. He is one to get the ball on the outside for us. 2.6 tackles, not really his go. I guess inside 50s, 5.8. He's the connector for us. His disposal efficiency is pretty good when you look at the competition. He's 73.1% disposal efficiency. Rebound 50s, 3.2. His kicking efficiency is 66.3, which is good. Doesn't do a heck of a lot of clearance work, but it's his score involvements, 6.3. His score launches, 11 score launches. that's where his value to the team is. He's really turned into the connector for us this year in the absence of Tommy Lynch. He's the bloke that we try to get the ball in to when we're looking to transition into our forward 50. And for all of that, Macca, and for all of that, he's still not the answer.
You're very down on him, and I think he had a great year actually.
And I'm going to say, Macca, sorry, that there's something wrong with this position heat map because it's showing C's only had one. It hasn't updated with the rest of the stats. So let's just ignore that position heat map because that's not right.
Well, the way we play our game at the moment, and with Seed, and you say we do like to put the ball into Seed's hand because he has got very good efficiency with his disposal by foot, and he's also got fantastic length with his kicking as well when required. And to me, that leaves Tommy Lynch out on a limb and nowhere to go because I like our forward line structure and using Seedsman as a connector because Seeds can play halfback and has played halfback, so I think he's ideal in that particular role. And as I said, I like him a lot better than you do, and I think that he's a very important part of our structure. And when he goes well, we tend to go well.
Well, he's showing some elite stats. 5.8 inside 50s is classed as elite. 10.6 effective kicks per game is elite. 636.5, I think, meters gain is, I think, competition leading. So there's a lot of value there, Macca. I just want him to be able to. I just feel like at times he's a bit tunnel visioned, and I think he's a bit of a one-trick pony. And I would love for him to add the ability to lower his eyes at times and hit up a 30-metre pass. Not every kick from Paul Seedsman needs to be a 50-metre kick down the line. I'd like him to be able to drop the eyes and hit up some options because we've shown that whenever we get those shallow forward 50 entries, it comes straight back out. And for all the metres that Paul gains, I would love to go into a deep dive analysis about how much in the negative territory we get from rebounds off his kicks.
Also, you've got to take into account all the positive things that happen from his kicks as well, and then balance it up.
Yeah, absolutely, and don't disagree with that at all. And look, I'm glad that we've got Seed in the team, but I guess what I'm referring to when I say he's not the answer, he's not the outside class answer. Does that make sense?
Well, he said he's not the perfect answer. I agree with that because he does do the things that you said he does, but he also does all the good things that the stats say he does as well. So we're better in the team with him in than if he wasn't in the team. So
we're better with him in the team when he's in form. We all know what Seedsman is like when he's not switched on, and let's not forget he had a filthy first quarter against St Kilda, a filthy first quarter, and that was bad Seedsman. He got the ball, but he just tanked it. He just turned it over and turned it over and turned it over, and that's
well. I did tell you the story about why he never played for Collingwood again. That was for one of those episodes.
Yeah.
So it is in him. I'm not denying that, but fortunately we haven't had a lot of it, put it that way.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Look, we've got 1990 Crow in the chat putting his hand up, so I'd love to get 1990 on board. So
it's always worth a listen.
Yeah, absolutely. Some would say more than us, Macca, so let's invite him in to chat. And g'day, mate. How you going?
Good, thanks. How you going? How you going, Macca?
Pretty good.
Good to see you on, mate. When are you going to tell us?
I just thought it was an interesting discussion going through individuals, and I guess sort of mapping out what the club might be looking to do for the rest of the season, but also looking into the future. I'm just couple of interesting things I've read this week. You look at, I think one of the things you haven't gone through is sort of looked at the games played of our squad. Obviously, a lot of our squad's quite young, and that's just where our list currently is. But you look at the games played between 50 and 150 games, and I think I've read there's only like 3 or 4 players in that range, and the rest of them are Rory Sloane and Taylor Walker. So there's quite a long. What I'm trying to say is that there's quite a long road to go in order to get the games into our list that we've currently got. And I just think as a fan base, we have to be patient, knowing that it's going to take 2 or 3 seasons to get the games that we need into these guys. And I guess on the back of that is that you have to be really positive with what we've seen from the group, given that limitation, and the fact that they are so low in games played, and yet their output is well beyond their years.
I think that's a very good point you've raised there, actually, because I know at one stage I don't know what the exact figures are now, but I remember in one game we had it was 12 players with less than 20 games under their belt in one particular team. That's the point you're making?
Yeah, just I think at the start of the year we had a lot of our best 22 had played 2, 5, 10 games. I think it was like 8 to 10 players, and it's like I think we remember you guys were talking at the start of the season when we saw those SANFL performances against Port Adelaide, thinking it was going to be a really, really, really long year. Just the way that they were playing, and also looking at the list in games played, thinking, if we win 4 or 5 games, that's going to be a great outcome. Now we're halfway through the season, and they've won 5 games already.
1990. Would you agree with me that the way they played in those 2 pre-season games against Port was a very different style of game to what we're playing at the moment? I think that those Port trial games actually exposed our strengths and weaknesses, and I think as a consequence, that's one of the things that's led to us focusing very much on ground ball / contested ball type work, because I think we're actually quite vulnerable, and I think the games this year have shown that we're quite vulnerable to teams that can get it on the outside.
I definitely agree. I think it's 2 parts. It's, yes, we learnt a heck of a lot from it, and Nick's would have rebranded or readjusted his game plan to suit based on the results that he saw, which I think he is doing continually as the season goes on.
Yep.
I think you'll see certain aspects of our game that we were seeing in the first 4 or 5 weeks that have completely changed to the team that we saw run out against St Kilda.
Agreed.
But also, I think we were foxing a little bit in those games. I think we were probably just sort of trialing things and playing players out of position and sort of just seeing what certain things we think might work as opposed to going 100%. Anyway, it's hard to know without being on the inside,
of course,
obviously. Yeah. But I think as an overall, for my opinion, for the season is we have to be incredibly happy with what we've seen.
Agreed.
What would you like us to get to chase in the draft?
Say it again, sorry, Mac, I didn't quite get that.
What would you like us to chase in the draft, 1990?
Oh, mids, and mids. I think, particularly with our first pick, that has to be a midfielder. Hopefully with a bit of class. I think Matty Roberts stands out as someone that we need. I've made the comparison with having watched him to Simon Goodwin. Bit of raking left foot, bit of polish, can go inside and out. I think he's exactly what we need. Unfortunately, Jason Horn's not going to be available to us.
And he might not be either.
No, so anyway, that is what it is.
There is another one, 1990. Peter J hopped in the chat earlier and just popped up some Arlo Draper stats from the weekend. He went back to the 18s because of the bye and the Samford, and just had another lazy 30+ games with I think 7 or 8 inside 50s or something, and he's sneaking up the charts. Arlo Draper,
he's a good player.
Yep,
he's a good player. I'll be an interesting one to see where he goes, because I think it's quite a heavy midfielder first round draft this year, and he could go anywhere between 7 and 20, I think.
I agree.
So there's a bit to play out in terms of where our picks land.
Well,
draft night.
The champs are going to give us a very good indication of where blokes like Arlo sit. Obviously, with Matty Roberts, not playing because of his syndesmosis injury, that gives lads like Arlo a bit of a crack in the midfield. And I'm going to be very interested to see how he goes, because if he has a good champs, I wouldn't mind betting that he goes high teens, maybe 10.
You could be right. I just think realistically we're going to have a pick above that, and I think Roberts will be in our swinging range, whereas Draper might be just below. But I guess we'll wait and see. We might end up with another pick in the first round and prioritise getting him. But I think after that, we're looking at you've done a draft analysis on Ferrers.
Yeah,
I think he's someone to look at in the second round. I think that third tall is definitely something we need to look at with Shane McAdams' form.
Yeah.
And I think the other aspect is, what do we do with Matt Crouch? Because you look at Keys and Laird on the inside, Matt Crouch is probably not the one we want to be throwing in there as the third mid to complement those two. But you look in the SANFL, we've already got Luke Pedler there developing as another inside mid. So I think Matt Crouch, unfortunately, sort of sits with his injury and not having played this year as the third banana, and he might look to go elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, it was a question. Sorry, Matt. It was a question that I was going to ask Macca a bit later, but we might just ask it now. Have we been fortunate? And no one wants an injury, but have we been fortunate with Matt Crouch's lack of availability in terms of being able to develop young Sam Berry?
I'll have first crack at that, and I reckon we have been very lucky there, because if Crouch had been available, he would have been playing, and that would have, somebody like Berry wouldn't have got that opportunity.
Yeah.
And I also think that I hope Crouch is available before the end of the season, and I would like us then to play him every game until the end of the season, so that we can trade him and get some value for him, because I think that in the long term, the point you were making there, Fiend, about the type of player we've got in the midfield and the type of player we've got rising in the midfield, they're all of the same sort of mould. They're inside mids. And we really, really need outside mids with great pace. That's what we need.
Yeah.
I think if Matt left, like in all likelihood, he would end up with a band 3 compensation, which would be an second rounder.
I think we'd be lucky with a band 3,
So, whether we play him or we don't play him, it's not going to have a huge impact, I don't think. But from what do we do with what we get for him, I think that's going to be the key thing, because we're going to have 3 second rounders with if that happened, with Melbourne's second rounder that we also have. And the guy that I'd be looking at after having watched him last month is Hugh Jackson out at North Adelaide. He saw on the weekend he had 32 touches and 3 goals, and he's quite classy and got good pace, and I think he's someone to watch.
Very good, mate. As always, appreciate you coming on, and your insights are always good talking points. So thanks again, and thanks for your ongoing support, and get out.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Yeah, well done, 9090.
If anyone else wants to try and top that, probably unlikely, because 9090 always has some smart things to say. Stick your hand up, and we'd be happy to get you on. This week is certainly the week to be doing that. All right, let's just move on with some of these players, Mac. I don't want to drag this on too long, but there's a couple of players that I want to highlight if possible. Young Harry Schoenberg, it was no secret that I was going to bring him up because the kid's just a bloody legend in the making, in my opinion. Let's see how he's gone.
I think you're his illegitimate father, Fiend.
Well, I'm quite legitimate about it, I think.
No, I know you love to get that, lad. He's terrific.
I'd tell you what, there's a couple of stats that have surprised me. His disposals are a bit higher than I thought. 16.6 average, 2.7 tackles per game. He kicks more than he handballs, which is good. It's averaging 2.3 clearances. Hasn't had a huge amount of time around stoppage. But he's got a couple of above average stats there, but not a lot in the red zone. His disposal efficiency is probably a little bit down, and that's tailed off a bit, I think, actually, as he's become a little bit more adventurous and gotten involved in the contest a little bit more. Averaging around about 6.2 effective kicks per game at a kick efficiency of just under 66%. It's not a marking play, but his clearances is edging up towards 1 centre clearance per game and 1.5 stoppage clearances per game. 2.7 tackles, which is good. 16.4 pressure acts. He is someone, Macca, that maybe might end up being this part of the silk that we're looking for on the outside.
I think he might be too, because sometimes he just glides past, doesn't he?
Yep.
Was that last game or the one before, in the last quarter, when he knocked up about 12 possessions in the last quarter? When
that was
really
against St Kilda. Had his probably his biggest quarter of his career to date in that game.
He really looked like a jet in that last quarter, didn't he? And they've been thrashing at each other for 3 quarters, and it's really the game's on the line. And there he comes out. I thought he was fantastic in that last quarter.
Yep. I think, and I won't fanboy too much, but I think that he is actually the first midfielder that we've had for a long time that has shown genuine footy IQ. Not just being able to accumulate possessions and play the safe sideways chip or the bomb into the forward line. He shows genuine IQ in close. He's unflappable. He gets his arms free. He doesn't panic, and he puts players into better positions. He disposes to advantage, and all he needs is a yard of pace and a bigger tank, and he could just be part of that outside solution. He's not getting a huge amount of centre clearance work at the moment, and tends to do his stoppage clearance work mostly in the forward line. See you, PJ Crows. Thanks for stopping by, mate. But I think as he progresses, we're going to see some more of his work on the outside.
Yeah, I think you did right, because he's the type of player that he's still got a bit of puppy fat on him. He appears to have a little bit of puppy fat on him.
Yeah.
And, look, if I was a coach, I'd be looking at him and saying, I think this guy can become somebody special, and I'd be really having him working his ass off over summer, just getting rid of some of that puppy fat, just because I just think he seems to have, and also endurance, but he seems to have really reasonably good endurance. But I just think he could be a very, very good player with A, experience, and B, a little bit of puppy fat off him, and C, just a little bit more stamina, and so that he can have a lot of time on the ball.
Yeah, and what I saw against St Kilda too was a bit of aggression. He was playing quite angry, and noticeably he was playing quite angry when we were playing badly. I think it was annoying him, so I think he sets a standard for himself, and he's got a bit of mongrel about him, Mac, and I won't rave on anymore, but watch this space for young Harry. Who else should we have a look at? Let's have a look at Ned Mchenry, another young lad, who we probably weren't as confident about at the beginning of the year, were we, Mac? But he's going okay, only averaging the 12 disposals per game, 3.3 tackles as you'd expect. He's a bit of a tackler. Not a lot of green there in his ratings, but his energy around the contest is team lifting, and he's just starting to get more of the agate. You can see there is his pressure acts averaging just under 20 per game, tackles 3.3 per game. Just needs to get more of the ball, Mac, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, last year I would not have given a mouldy peach for him, but but this year I must admit I'm starting to like the guy. To me, he gives 100%, and I think his presence now is bigger than his size, and it's also bigger than his stats, because his energy is fantastic, and I reckon he transfers energy into the side. I really like the way he's going at the moment, and I think that he will develop into a very, very handy player for us. He's not going to be like the saviour or anything like that, but he's a player that he's prepared to risk his life and limb to get the ball, and he's stopped that silly business about just being out there to irritate the opponent. No, I like him now. I really like him. I just like what he does by comparison, say, to the other one, the other Macca down in the forward line, who sometimes just doesn't even try.
McAdam.
To me, McAdam. I think as it's been said in the chat, he needs a bit of polish. Yep, but the guy tries so hard. He puts his energy into it, and he's got good endurance as well. He just keeps going and going. No, I like him.
Okay, so a couple of things just to temper that. I think he needs to get more of the ball if he's going to continue to play sort of that wing high half forward role. I think he needs to get his possessions up over the 16 or 17. But I'll put this to you, Macca. We've got James Rowe, who actually seems to be better when he's up the ground.
He does.
And Tariq Newchurch, who is a long way away, although he shows flashes. Is Ned Mchenry a small forward option? As in a deep small forward option?
You mean in the pocket?
A deep small forward, yes.
No, I see him on that half forward flank, and because he often goes right down a half back as well, because he works hard. So
he does work hard.
And
I can see him. I can see him yo-yoing with Jimmy Rowe, because Rowe is good when he comes up as well, and he's very creative. James Rowe with ball in hand, and I just wonder whether they can I just wonder whether they can do a little bit of rubber banding in those two positions.
Well, as Tomo says on the chat, you can give it a crack because we're rebuilding. Why not? And quite rightly, because both of them seem to go well at that high half forward. And we know that Rowe can snag a goal or two up forward. Yeah, it'd be interesting putting Mchenry up there around there with the drop of the ball right near goals. I think he probably could play it. He probably could.
Well, I'm thinking also from a defensive pressure point of view. It's something that we have lacked this season, Macca, is forward 50 tackles. And we get a fair bit of that from Ned if he was playing a bit deeper. So where does it leave Lockie Murphy, do you think, with James Rowe and Ned Mchenry sort of cementing their places?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because somebody says out of the team. And that might be what it is. You've got... we've obviously got three small player spots, and when he comes back, there's four. It means there's four people vying for it. And I think the only way Murphy's going to get back into it is one of them has a poor game, a series of poor games, and then, like for example, McAdam. The way that McAdam had played previously for a couple, 2 or 3 games in a row, it would have been a perfect time, like you'd bring Murphy in, and. I think that he, at the moment, is not in the best 22 when all those three are playing at their best.
1990 makes an excellent point in the chat. Murphy's stats are identical to when he started 50 games ago, which is exactly the same as Jared Petrenko was. They have, and I think that's the problem with Lockie Murphy. His ceiling is very low. I think
that's a good point.
Murphy is what you see is what you get. I still contend, and I will always contend, that he plays the wrong style of game for his body size. He goes up for too many marks. He doesn't position himself well for a crumb. So he doesn't play like a genuine small, if that makes sense. And I think, unfortunately, that actually works against him. I like James Rowe and Ned Mchenry with ball in hand far more than Lockie Murphy. And I think that both those players, particularly James Rowe, have a better instinct of where to put themselves at the feet of a contest. So, who knows? I mean, Lockie Murphy is a very good story, but I think he is one that might actually have some value on the trade table, and the club might have to make a bit of a hard call with Lockie Murphy.
Well, it depends. It depends whether the club is trying to get draft picks, and I mean, he's handy to have. Oh, another one.
Oh, there's another one that bloody just re-signed. What are they doing?
We are going to have very little to work with.
Sack Reed. Well, that surprises. I've got to say that surprises me. That surprised me. But anyway, never mind. All right. Well, let's move on. All right. Let's have a look at Sam Berry, who I've been extremely impressed with. Sam Berry.
Yeah.
Again, low disposal count, but he had 16 touches against St Kilda last week, so he's just starting to get involved in the game a little bit more, and has been played in a little bit of a graveyard slot there across half forward, which can be a bit of a death by 1,000 cuts kind of position. But when he's around the contest, he gives you clean hands, he gives you good disposal, generally by hand and improving by foot. But he straight lines the ball, and if you have a look at his defensive stats there, he's above average in tackles inside 50, elite in pressure acts. Now we're talking about a kid who's played less than 10 games of AFL football.
I know.
Elite
Amazing.
in pressure acts, right? Defensive half pressure acts 9.4. They're the stats of a lad that is committed and doesn't take a backward step. His contested ball work is very good, 5.7 average contested possessions per match, elite contested possession rate of 55.3. So a lot to work with Sam. He's played since round one. The only rest he's had is when he got an injury. He's a 250 game inside mid.
Well, the last young lad I've ever seen put on a Crows jumper and going as hard as he does with the ball and as fearless as he does with the ball was Rory Sloane when he made his debut. Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to have the class of Rory Sloane, but he's certainly going to have the toughness of it. And I agree with the general opinion that he's going to have a much, much higher ceiling than what he's playing at now because of the positions he's being played at now. He's absolutely fearless. He's tough. He has a real crack. He's got clean hands. He's got a lot going for him. He's going to be a very good player for us.
Yep. And the fact that he can hit the scoreboard too is a bit of a bonus. I think he's going to be a central component of the Crows midfield for the next 10 years, to be honest with you. And when you consider, you're talking about Berry and Schoenberg, we've got Luke Pedler coming up from the twos, who's another very workmanlike kind of a bloke who'll get a lot of possessions. We've got Ben Keys, of course, who's still only young. Is a bit of a workhorse. Our inside midfield rotations, I think, are sewn up for the next 10 years. I think the club has recruited very well in that space, and barring any unforeseen drop off in form or mishaps, you would think that we're good now for inside midfielders or ball players.
Yeah, 100% agree with that, Fiend. And it's just now we need that speed and outside skills, silky skills outside.
Yes, exactly. And that's, when we're talking about what we need at the beginning, and we'll cover that a little bit more again shortly, that's exactly what we need. So let's have a talk about a couple of blokes that might just be on the borderline. And we're talking about trade options. Young Chase Jones, Macca, where do you sit?
I'd be happy to trade him if I got at least a second rounder for him.
Well, his stats aren't terrible. Of course, he's come back into the side and been playing predominantly off halfback. So he's got his average disposals up to 11.3, which isn't bad for a back pocket. But there's not a lot of green in those numbers, and there's quite a lot of red in those numbers. Well,
I might be being tough on him, but I am very disappointed in this particular choice of a player in a draft that we could have got ourselves a real A-grader. He has gone better in the back lines, And in his very last game when he played against St Kilda, he just showed me. I doubt he's ever going to get to what we really want him to be. Remember, he beat a player for the ball, and he picked up the ball. The other player was on the ground, so he starts walking instead of running. Another player comes back and tackles him. And when Chase Jones should have been off and out in the clear, and I just don't think he doesn't seem to have the footy IQ.
It did seem to be a real lack of awareness, didn't it? Lack of spatial awareness. I mean, he sidestepped that bloke nicely, got around him, and he noticed that the bloke slipped and went to ground, but he thought that gave him another 20 minutes to kick the ball, and it showed a lack of confidence in my opinion, because if a kid with that amount of pace, once he gets around a bloke, he should have been off. He could have gained 15 metres. He had no one in front of him. He could have.
And that's what he should have done. That's exactly what he should have done. Look, they'll probably keep him, and if he does, I hope he just keeps improving at a rapid rate, because he's still got a lot of improvement to do to be where he should be.
I don't like to bag a kid, so I'm pleased for him that he's worked his way back into the side, and I'm pleased for him that the club have given him the opportunity to find a position in an area that maybe he wasn't considered initially, because he was certainly drafted as a midfielder, and he was definitely drafted as someone who could provide us with outside pace. I wouldn't be surprised I think he'll stay on the list, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't on the list.
Yeah, I think he'll be there, but if they did trade him, I wouldn't be crying. No.
Duller on the chat says, "Really, Fiend, you don't like bagging a kid." I don't like bagging a kid. Hang on, that's probably shut up. Thanks, Duller. A fair call, I guess. But I mean, look, I have empathy for Chase, because I think he might have been slightly overrated in his draft year. I think he might have been thrown to the wolves a bit by Donny Pike and not developed terribly well. And I just think it's good that the club have provided him with an opportunity to try to forge an AFL career. I'm not sold.
I'd be delighted if he came good. I mean, I want him to come good.
Yeah.
I really would. I'm just not seeing it at the moment that it's there, although there was a little bit of improvement towards the end of the year. Let's hope that next year he comes out and he justifies why we picked him in the first place. But I'm not 100% confident that will be the case.
Yeah, J&M says he was playing well against men at 17 before coming to the club. I don't think it's... no one's questioning Chase's ability to play against big bodies. But let's not forget, it was a bloody Tasmanian Football League. It's not a high standard. And there might have been men, but he would have been running around them like they were witches' hats. So I don't actually think, in retrospect, that was a terribly good indicator of his form, his ability. Darcy Fogarty was playing against men when he was a kid as well, and it's taken him ages. Look, I hope Chase makes it. I hope he makes that defensive position his own. He certainly would be a handy replacement for Luke Brown when Luke Brown decides to give it up, in terms of being a small defender. And let's just leave it at that.
I shudder at that thought, but anyhow.
Well, anyway. All right. An interesting one, Mac. An interesting one. Will Hamill. Hang on. Let me just give you his main stats. 10.6 disposals. Kicked handball ratio, pretty much 50-50. A couple of tackles. I loved Will when he came in. Jury's out for me on Will Hamill.
Oh, me too. I was about to say, my advice to Hamill, put that bloody headband back on, grow your hair long again, mate, and go back and play the type of football you were playing before, where you got the ball and you just took off at 100 mile an hour. At the moment, he's just turned into a bit of a vanilla type footballer, and Whereas when he first started, he was a dashing footballer. And I thought he was going to be very, very special. And he still may be, but he hasn't had a very, very good year. Now, he has had a bit of injury this year, and he's had a concussion, which may have slowed him down. But I was, and somebody else says, I think the head knocks have made him regress. He definitely has regressed. There's no doubt about that. So whether that is concussion, whether it's confidence or whatever, because you can't lose belief in yourself. As I said, grow your hair long, put your headband on, and go back to where you started.
Look, I still think he's doing all right in terms of getting the ball. He needs to clean up below the knees. A couple of times against St Kilda there, he let the ball get behind him, and that resulted in scores against. I think what Will needs to find is a bit of composure with ball in hand. At the moment, he's actually reminding me a little bit of a young Martin Matner, Macca, where he gets the ball in hand and he runs, and that's all well and good, and then he's got to do something with it, and that's when things can go a little bit sideways for him. So he needs someone to get into him about his composure with ball in hand, and he needs to be very decisive about what he's going to do with the ball once he gets it. It's not just a matter at AFL level of getting the ball and burning everyone off, because at AFL level that's not going to happen.
No, but he's still very, very young in terms of football experience, and at this level, and he may come out next year and revert back to the form that when he first started playing, and in fact he might even go further, or he may not. But yeah. I think long term he'll be okay.
Yeah, 1990 says, remember how us letting Matner go went for us? Well, it went well for Marty because he played in a premiership with Sydney, and I'm certainly not saying that that Will Hamill is a dud, but I think everyone would agree that Marty Matner, for whatever reason, didn't show what he ended up producing at Sydney while he was at Adelaide, and that comes back down to coaching and development, and I think that the coaches owe Will a bit of one-on-one time to get his head in the right spot for what he needs to do at AFL level, and he also needs to build up some upper body strength, mate.
Yep, I agree.
Because at the moment, when he gets tackled, it's not just that he's light. Some players will some light players will get tackled and it won't affect them. Unfortunately for Will, when he gets tackled, he's got no neck strength. He's got no upper body strength at all. So his head just wobbles around, and I think that's why he's been prone to a couple of concussions. And the last thing we want to see is that he'd have to leave the game early because he keeps getting knocked out.
Oh, a couple of those tackles were very, very savage. One in particular, jeez.
Yeah, but he got tackled against St Kilda and rattled him. I think when you watch him get tackled, he's quite limp. There's no strength around the shoulder neck area, and the first thing that blokes in rugby do, they build up their neck strength to protect their head. So I think Will needs to do a little bit of upper body work there.
Yep.
All right, one or two more, Mac. I'll leave it up to you. Who would you like to have a look at?
Well, they've suggested Lockie Shoal, and I think that's a good one.
All right, let's find Lockie Shoal. So Lockie, in my opinion, has just tailed off a little bit, averaging 18.5 disposals, which is pretty good. 12.2 kicks, 6.3 handballs, 4.3 marks he gets on the outside for us. And, again, probably just tailed off in that area, which has resulted in us not being able to get as much uncontested possession in the last 3 or 4 games, Mac. But he's an elite kick, and with ball in hand, he's very effective.
I thought he had an outstanding year until his last 2 games, and I was very heavy about the last game he played, that he played so badly. I watched him very closely, that he had not only had to be dropped, but should not be played the next week because he just looked buggered. And I was absolutely delighted when the club actually did that and they didn't play him, because he wasn't the same player as he had been earlier in the year when he was really up and running. Because he's a running machine, and he was still running, but not with the same enthusiasm, and he wasn't getting there, and he wasn't going as hard. And the guy just needed a rest. He's young, and but I think he's an enormous talent. He's got a lot of talent, and he can cover a lot of ground. And he's got excellent disposal. So yeah, he's one of our best, and when he's 100% fit and ready, he'll be good.
Yep, I agree with all of that, Macca. He did look extremely tight. I think we commented on it after, I can't remember which game it was, but it was about 3 or 4 weeks ago that he was starting to look like he was running up and down on the spot. He didn't have the same appetite for the contest, which suggests to me he is playing a bit sore, because he's certainly he's not like Rory Atkins. Lockie Shaw is quite happy to go for the ball when it's his turn to go, but his body size means that I reckon he carries a few hits, and I think that was starting to show. But at his best, he's shown us what he can do, Rising Star nomination and all that. So I'm with you. I'm glad they gave him a rest. I wouldn't mind if they gave him a rest for a couple more, to be honest with you. And just ease him back into it, and get him into another one that needs to get into the gym a bit in the off-season.
Absolutely. And Jordan Butts is worthy of a mention too, I think.
Geordie Butts, well, the stats aren't going to be great on Geordie because he's a bloody defender, but I've been so happy to see his progression this year. He has stepped into that role. It could have been a disaster without Daniel Talia, Macca. But Geordie's stepped in with 10.7 average disposals, 3.3 marks, 1.5 tackles. But it's his defensive work, 5.2 pressure acts is low, but 6.2 spoils, 4.9 contested defensive one-on-ones. He is a contested defensive loss percentage is only 29%. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, it means he's won 70% of the time.
He only loses 30% of the contest, which for a young lad in a team that sometimes has leaked a fair amount of forward 50 entries, that's outstanding in my opinion. And we've got a career defender on our hands with Geordie Butts, and I'm so pleased to have seen A, that he got a chance, and B, that he's made the most of it.
Is he still growing or something? At the moment, I think he looks taller than he did at the start of the year. Or was that just because he's going so good?
Well, he's listed at 198 centimetres, Macca. That's
what he looks like, yeah.
198 centimetres, that's not short. That's very tall for a defender.
It is.
A couple of years gone by, that's a ruckman. So, 198, 97 kegs. And he's only, 23, 22, something like that. I mean, very, very good story, Jordan Butts. Extremely good.
Yep, and probably finish on Riley O'Brien, perhaps.
Oh, really? I'm not even going to bother with O'Brien's stats.
I know, but what do you think of his year?
Oh, look. Been all right. I think I haven't been overly impressed, to be honest with you. Macca, the big thing about Riley last year in his great season last year was his ability around the ground, and we just haven't seen much of it this year, in my opinion.
Well, he's been found out this year, and I keep repeating it, is that when he's up against a long-arm ruckman, because he doesn't jump very high, he's better against, the one's body to body. I don't think his ruck work's been anywhere near to the standard of what it was last year. He hasn't had a great year around the ground either, but although I thought last match against the Saints, I thought that he did take some very timely marks, so I was pleased to see that, and then let's hope that he is starting to build back a bit of form, but he's not quite the same player that he was last year.
I know you put a lot of focus on his ruck work. To be honest with you, you know what, I couldn't care less about his ruck work. It's his work around the ground that is where his value is. If he can break even at ruck contests, I'm happy. But it's his work around ground, and he's 27.5 hit outs is above average. Centre clearance is 1.8 is elite. His hit outs to advantage is only 7.6 out of those 27.5 hit outs. Macca, so not a lot of value in them. But defensively, he's good, averaging nearly 3 tackles a game, 12 pressure acts, which is great for a big man. But it's the marking here. So marks, he's only averaging 3.3 marks per game. Only 1.8 contested marks per game. And only 2.2 intercepts is okay. But it was his value in those key areas that was the difference for him. It set him apart last year. And I know that the reports are, and I think he came out and said that he's been carrying a bit of an injury, and that's fair enough.
Okay.
But he needs to return to his 2020 form in terms of around the ground work, because we do need a bloke to be able to take a clunk. Like in those games versus St Kilda last week, and I know it was wet, but in those hard grindy games, we need a bloke that can take a clunk.
I agree, and look, I thought he did take a few last week against St Kilda, and let's hope that that's the start of a good back half of the year.
All right, I'm going to finish on with two, Mac. First, we'll talk about Riley Thilthorpe. The stats won't show much, but I just want to highlight the fact that I feel over the last 2 weeks he's just starting to work his way into the competition, and I feel like being such a key component of the win against St Kilda will really make him feel a part of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, my opinion. I'm on record of saying he's going to be the best player to walk into this club since Andrew McLeod. That's how good I think he will be.
Yeah.
I just think he's. It's not necessarily next week or the week after, but he'll build each year until he's just going to be a sensation.
Yeah, and I think it would be remiss of us not to cover off this guy before we finish up. Tex Walker. Okay, if you have a look on screen, the amount of green and blue stats there, averaging 15 disposals, which is elite for a tall forward. His metres gained is 323, so he's getting up and down the ground. 9.1 contested possessions, 4.3 ground ball gets. He's getting clearances, he's kicking goals, he's winning ruck contests, he's taking marks, he's averaging nearly 6 marks a game, including nearly 3 inside 50 per game, and 2.5 contested marks a game. Just so good for the bloke. And, we have not been his biggest fan over the last couple of years at all. Not his biggest fan. I think with good justification too, Macca. And I think if he was hand on heart, he would agree. But how good is it to see a bloke on the wrong side of 30 who's been written off by everybody just reinvigorate himself under a new regime and with a new group of players and just look like a bloke who's 25, 26, ready to tear the competition apart?
Well, both you and I wrote him off at the end of last year, and rightly so on his form. We can only judge him on what we see out on the oval. And having said that, he was obviously carrying a lot of injuries, but when you go out there and play, you judge as if you're fit. This year, his form has been so good, in fact, I can't even remember him having better form, that if they were to pick the All-Australian team now, he would have to be the centre half forward. That's how well I think he'd play.
I agree with you. There's no doubt in my mind about that. And if he continues, he just had a little drop off there after about, I think, round 4, and they rested him appropriately, and that was good. And now he's having another rest, obviously, with the bye. He's a smoky for the Coleman. And this is a bloke that isn't just at the twilight of his career. This is a bloke that was roundly written off by all and sundry, including this podcast. Completely written off.
Yep, exactly. But, as I said, at the moment, he'd be the All-Australian centre forward.
Yep. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if the club give him another year. And I think, as someone pointed out in the chats, I think, 1 year contract's the right thing for Tex at this stage of his career. But you know, the trio of Tex, Fogarty, and Thilthorpe actually looks like it's got some promise. With a couple of goal-kicking smalls around them, and you know, a bit of output from our midfield.
Absolutely.
So I'm happy with that at the moment.
I think he's been fantastic, and he has a great football brain. Ball in hand, he has a great football.
He's a natural footballer, Macca. He's a natural footballer. Always has been. That's never been the issue. The issue has been his ability to get both arms over his head, to have confidence in that knee and that hip that he's got and the foot that he's got. You know, let's make no mistake, he's been carrying stuff, but we all thought that those injuries were going to get the better of him and be the end of his be the end of his career. And he's at this stage, touch wood, he's been able to stave off those injuries and have a fantastic career, and well deserved. You know, he's been a great club man, like him or not. He's been a great club man and been through some rough times, and he probably won't win a flag with his beloved Adelaide Crows, but it'll be great to see him off on a high with the team on the rise, knowing that he was a part of that regrowth.
Absolutely, and he's such a well-liked person by amongst the football fraternity, and particularly amongst our players.
Yeah,
he is a positive reinforcement to the rest of the team and to the younger players.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Macca, I think final thoughts on that. There's probably a couple of players I think that are in the gun. We've talked about Matty Crouch. We've talked about Lockie Murphy. I think Tommy Lynch is going to be an interesting case. He's obviously very entrenched in the club, doing some coaching with the women as well. I don't see a spot for Tom in the best 22 for Adelaide, but I think that the Crows love him. The players love him. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets treated when he comes back in. Daniel Tully is another interesting one, Mac, and we've spoken about this a couple of times, about where he fits when he comes back in. Obviously, Geordie Butts doesn't deserve to get dropped, but I think he'll hang around, but I don't see him playing too many more games in the ones, to be honest.
Yeah, look, if you feel horrible about these two players, because they've been players that have been so loyal to the club and been good to the club and given great service. I mean, Talia, I don't know how many years he's played with it, what, 10 to 12 years he's played with us, something like that?
Yeah.
And he's been so good for us for so long, but his spot's gone. And look, essentially you delist him, but I think they'll probably just keep him on for one more year. Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know... I feel for Daniel. He's given his heart and soul for this club.
And Lynch, they might try and talk him into becoming a coach and a development coach or something like that. But and both of those boys, would be great. You feel very guilty about both of them, don't you?
Well, yeah, but I mean, I guess they've had their turn, haven't they? They've had their chance, and for whatever reason, it didn't work out for them. So you can't do anything about it. And if they hang around, then all well and good. Look, I think we might wrap it up, Macca. It's been a good chat, a good night. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord. Thanks to everyone who supports us on Patreon. I'm scrolling our supporters' names on the screen at the moment, and if you would like to support us on Patreon, there's two tiers, $2 a month or $5 a month. Not very expensive. You do get a little bit, and I'm just trying to bolster that up as we go along. So get around that, and also make sure you give us a like and subscribe if you're a YouTube watcher, and join us on Discord so you can get around the chat. Also go to YouTube. There's a video on how to get in to our Discord server if you're not familiar. We'll have Nikki with us back next week, Macca. I know you've missed her. Hello. Nah, Macca might have gone. I don't know what he's doing. But anyway, I'll take the opportunity to say goodnight to everybody. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Tuesday with the Tuesday Night Live. And in the meantime, I don't know where you've gone, Macca. In the meantime, take it easy, and we'll see you on Tuesday night.